Hi, I'm Taylor Heaton with Mom on the Spectrum, and today we have a very special guest who's here to teach us how to turn our special interest into a career. This is a huge topic of interest for me because, generally speaking, the autistic community tends to struggle keeping employment, finding employment. We tend to be underemployed, not using our full capacity, our full skill set. And I really believe that if we can figure out how to harness our special interests, which tend to be huge skill sets for many of us, we can figure out how to turn that into a career or some side income. And I've invited a good friend of mine, Aubrey Hogan, who is a celebrated artist, and he's going to share some entrepreneurial tips with us today. Aubrey has built his art business from the ground up, and I've gotten to watch it evolve over time. I've known him for probably 15 years now, and I've seen him take it from just an idea, just a hobby, to now he gets to travel around the country. He's going to some of the largest art festivals out there, getting awards and prizes and recognition at almost every single one of them he goes to. It's been truly amazing to watch his business grow, and I'm really excited to invite him here with us today so that you can learn from his expertise. Okay, cool. Well, Aubrey, welcome to the channel. Intros are always awkward to me, so do you want to can we jump right into our questions that I've got for you today?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so I've filled them in on your art business background. Can you give us a little idea of your connection to the neurodivergent community?
Sure. Yeah, so I myself am neurodivergent, and I have a couple kids that are on the spectrum as well. Like you, Taylor, I came to this kind of late, or this realization later in life, mostly through my kids. I have a girl who's 9 and a son who is 6, and they've both received autism diagnosis. And so through going through that process with them, started doing my own self-reflection and noticing the connections. I've never received a formal diagnosis or anything. It didn't really feel important to me. Once my kids were diagnosed, I was like, this would just seem like one more bill to pay at the end of the day. So I was like, this seems pointless.
Aubrey, in terms of your art, did it start with the wooden signs that you made?
Yeah, so it kind of evolved out of that. So Molly and I were running a business where we were creating wood signs, and then we went in nurseries and those types of things, just cute little things for moms and kids. We were doing that together. It's kind of a side hustle. So I created these wood mosaics basically out of the scraps from the signs. I just kind of had this vision for a scene that I wanted to make, and so I just created this piece, and I had a lot of fun doing it and showed it to people, and it was well received. And like anybody, I enjoy a good pat on the back, and so I made some more of them, mostly because it was fun. And so after a while, I had this collection of art pieces, and so I started showing them to galleries and then going to small events and those kind of stuff. And so it was born out of this other business. And then the painting is really interesting. So my painting was something that I kind of picked up during COVID. At the beginning of COVID, everybody was set out to make themselves a better person, and so I started painting. Painting is the primary thing that I do right now, and that came from out of necessity almost, because I can paint much faster than I can do a wood mosaic. And so I had an art fair where somebody came into my booth and they literally bought everything in the booth.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so that's a fantastic feeling, obviously, but terrifying because I had another show 2 weeks later. And I had to call the show director, and I said, look, I know I juried in under this one art medium. I said, but this is what happened. I don't have enough stuff to fill the booth unless you let me bring some paintings as well. And so I dug up every painting that I could find, and then I just painted like a madman for 2 weeks, and then went to the show, and it was well received. And so it just kind of continued to evolve from there. So
that's been really cool to watch, because I think it started with what was it, a scroll saw or something that you bought, and
yeah.
So you were talking about the signs, and there was a need for that, like baby signs. People are buying these for the nursery, and I had one for the bakery. Speaking of my entrepreneurial stuff,
yeah.
So you made a wooden sign for my bakery. So I was curious about the painting, because it's got to be so time consuming to make all of the wooden art. So then you just keep evolving it, like you said, okay, well, I'm going to adapt, because people are buying this. So I know that people in our community, like I said, we tend to, autistic people particularly have a lot of special interests. And sometimes we're so good at those special interests that we're like better than professionals or people who do it professionally. Like we get so into it. So what would you tell someone who has that type of knowledge or skill set? How do you start to monetize something like that? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, kind of following the needs, that people are willing to buy, but what other advice would you have for turning skill sets into money?
So when I first got into business, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was 22 when I started my first real business, full-time business. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know you needed a business license. I didn't know how to file sales tax. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. So I would say if you want to do it, just the first thing you need to do is just put it out there. Get it out in front of people, set up a camera and record it and put it online and see how it's received. And then the market will tell you whether it has any value or not.
Yeah.
And it may not, and that's completely fine. Like you can still just do it because you love to do it. Like one of my special interests is fishing. Like in the summer, it becomes hard for me to work because I'd rather be doing that as much as I can. But I have no desire to monetize that because I know the first steps to monetizing that would be basically carrying a camera around with me everywhere I go out there.
Right.
And the whole point of that is for me is to disconnect. So, but if you want to monetize, the first step is just to see if there's any receptivity from the market. And the market will tell you, whether they value that as a need or not. I think it's important to say that market value is not the same thing as to whether that is valuable to you or not.
Right. Yeah. It's totally different.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple of things I hear you saying. So finding out, whether or not it's something that you want to pursue, that's really important because sometimes having a special interest, like that's just for you and that's a healing thing, like for you, it's fishing, connecting with nature. Whenever you start to monetize something, it changes the relationship you have with that thing in your life. And so I think that's a really good point of you have to decide, like, is this something that I want to pursue for money? And then the thought in my head, I read the book that the whole world has read, like You Are a Badass. And Jen Sincero talks in that book about, one of the single most important things is you just have to decide what you want, like a single pointed focus of like, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And then you go after it. And so the thing that is so great about this day and age, social media has a lot of downsides, but one awesome thing is you can create something right now and then immediately put it out and see what happens. Not only that, but I saw this, I don't know if you saw this on Instagram, they're starting this kind of like test landing. So like you can put something out, but it's like a soft landing with a small audience. And like before you actually release it to the whole web, it kind of gives you this pocket of a testing subject. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works yet, but there's so many different ways that you can immediately put your work out into the world, which is terrifying. And then there's also analytics on it. So like, I really want to talk about this video on YouTube, but then I look at the analytics and the numbers weren't good, but the numbers are really good for this subject. And so there's so much feedback that you can get that can kind of help you tweak your focus and your approach to what you're doing.
There's two ways to think about that. One is you let the market tell you what the market wants. And that's probably an easier way to build a business that makes money. The other way is to let the niche be you. So as a creator, you can kind of be your own niche. Kind of a controversial figure, but I think the epitome of this is like Joe Rogan. I only use him because he's like the biggest podcast in the world. His interests are like conspiracy theories and MMA fighting and stand-up comedy and so on and so forth. And, and like he's at the crosshairs of all those things. And so the more of those things that you have in common with Joe Rogan, the more you're going to like his show. But there's a lot of different connection points for them. I don't know that there's one key to monetizing, but you can let the market tell you what works. And then the other route is just to go out there and just, if as a creator, you can just really be yourself, and then people will connect with you from different ways.
Yeah. And we talk about that on the channel a lot. Like the authenticity is so important for neurodivergent people because it's almost a turnoff. If somebody's putting stuff, it is a turnoff. Like if somebody's putting stuff out in the world in a really inauthentic way, we have that BS radar of like they don't really mean what they're saying. One thing that I've kind of struggled with is like when I started the channel, it was my story. It was very authentic. Like, this is who I am. This is what I've been through. But when my channel really took off was when I kind of gave the algorithm what it wanted. And I did that, 16 characteristics of autistic women. Those types of videos, it's like I have to tell myself I'm still using my skill set. I'm still using my platform, to educate. But sometimes it can be helpful to do a few of those things. Not that it was inauthentic, but like you said, sometimes the market is going to dictate what's going to sell. And that gets you views, that gets you an audience. And then the people who connect with you, like you're saying, those connection points of, oh, I really resonate with this person because they like fishing or whatever, they're going to stick around, and you'll be able to go deeper in the type of content that you want. But sometimes for me, it's meant like doing the surface level content that I'm not crazy about, but it helps get people in the door.
Yes. Yeah. So for me, like, I like to paint, and I do this series on national parks, and that's a big driver for my business. Well, I don't want to get out of bed and paint a national park every day. I want to paint other things as well, but that's a huge driver for my business. So yeah, I'm going to paint all 67 national parks over the course of my career. And so the market will tell you what works, and then also just be yourself, and being yourself will help create a community. One mistake a lot of people will make early on is they don't do that. They don't want to show themselves online, and everybody has a different threshold for how much of themselves they're willing to reveal online. You need to do that so that people can connect with you. That's part of it. The opposite mistake a lot of people make is that when they want to start a business, they just try to go for the sell every single time without creating any more value than just, here, I have a product and come buy it. I don't remember who I heard this from, but I call those people assholes. They just ask, and they don't give. And so, like, if you want to know if like what you have to give is valuable, that people value it, just give it away. Just give it, and then for free, and then people will tell you how much it's valuable. I give that advice to painters when they're first starting out. I meet painters that have been doing it for years, and the problem is they're not charging enough work. And then I meet painters who are brand new, and they make the opposite mistake and say, well, you're brand new, just give it away. See if anybody will just take it from you. And then you'll know if it has value or not.
Yeah. And I mean, on that topic, like, we can get into the nitty gritty, but I just wanted to mention, like, lead magnets are really important. So that's what, like, for me, people on my channel, the Ultimate Guide to Understanding Autism, that's my lead magnet, and that's free. Anybody can download that. You put something out there and see if people will bite. Like, do they want this? And then people give feedback. People will let you know, like, here's what I like about it, here's what I don't like about it, and you can kind of tweak. But yeah, it can be really important to have something free that you put out there and see, how does this go over? What do people think about this?
Yeah, I still do that. So I have a promotional that I run. It's basically I'll send you an art print. It's free plus shipping. And that gets a lot of new people in the door on a consistent basis that otherwise probably would stumble across me or spend the time to value my work or to kind of enter into that ecosystem that is my business and kind of the community that surrounds it. So yeah, give it away, and give something away that's small, and do it really well. Yeah. And people will tell you, people will love it or they will hate on it, either way. And I mean, either way, you'll find your community.
Yeah. And on that note, like, giving something away, how have you found, that concept of you have to spend money to make money? Has that been true for you in building your businesses?
Yes. So there's different levels. So when you first start out, you don't have money to spend, unless you just come from wealth and somebody's going to give you money to build your business and not ask for anything in return. That's not the case for most people. So at first, what you have to give is time. And so you give time.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's what you have to give. I mean, and that's essentially what you're doing with any standard job, is you're trading time for money. And so that's what you have at first. So give your time, give it away for free. And then once there is some demand, then you can start charging for your time. And then as you scale and you have some more money, you can use that, you can spend that money and reinvest it in the business in a lot of different ways to basically buy back some of your time. And then the more you invest in your business, the more your time is worth. And so you can just spend it doing more and more of the things you like, on the things you like, and less on the things you don't like.
Yeah, I found that to be true too. And I think it can be kind of scary, whenever you start making a little bit of money and then putting it back into the business, that can be scary, but it really is kind of an investment, and like, you're betting on yourself. And like, I know I'm a workhorse. I know you're a workhorse. I'm always going to be creating. I'm always going to be moving forward. And so it can be scary to take some of that and like invest it in something new. But I think that's a really important part of growing. Like, for me, I just got all this new equipment, like teleprompter and like a mic stand, everything. And it's scary to put all that stuff into it. But like, your business starts to take on a new form and you kind of have to just take some risks and put yourself out there sometimes when you're growing. But I wanted to go back to something you were talking about, community. And that's been like the most important component of all of this for me, is building a community, the most powerful component. And there's people have specifically asked me in this community, I'm an artist. Can you help me meet with other artists? Like, I just want to convene with other neurodivergent artists. Can you share a little bit about the Artpreneur program you've got going on? Because I think that fits really well.
Yeah, happy to. I love making art, and that's part of it. But I also, as a serial entrepreneur, I just love business. The advantage that I had over a lot of artists is I had a business background. And so most artists don't ever make any real money off of it. I just had so many artists that would come to me, maybe they walk into a booth and they would want to ask questions about, how did you get to where you are? What are you doing that allows you to do this now? And it's always an interesting question, because it's like, well, what I'm doing now is not what you should be doing if you want to get here. And so I just was having enough of those conversations that I just thought, man, I love doing this. So I'm going to create this group. And so I have this group. It's called Six Figure Artpreneur. It's on School. In that group, basically, I offer courses where I just break down the things that I've learned, and strategies, business systems, those kind of things that are just important to have in place if you want to grow your business to a level where it's self-sustaining and you can make a living doing it. One of the first things I did within that group is I basically said, okay, most artists, I use six figures as like a goal for people to hit for just a yearly income. There's nothing magical about that number. It just seems to be like people, just the idea of hitting six figures, like, oh man, I really made it. Well, the truth is, you'll get to six figures and you'll think, wow, I still have a long ways to go. But it's a good target to start with. And so I broke that down into basically 5 stages that every artist goes through on that journey. And then we use those different levels 1 through 5 as shorthand to kind of talk about where you are in your artist journey, and just talk about the things that you should be working on at that time. So there's kind of this beginner stage where it's like, well, I'd love to do this, but I have no idea what you're doing. And in that stage, it's mostly just like, okay, you just need to make a lot of art. You need to put it out there. You need to get feedback. You need to hone your style. Your work needs to be recognizable as yours. When somebody walks into a gallery or a show or anything like that, they'll see your work and they'll know that that's yours. And then the second stage is really getting out there and starting to build a business. The third stage is really, okay, now that I've started to build a business, how do I put all these systems in place so that, I'm no longer the dog that caught the tire, just trying to make things work. And how do I create a real business? And the fourth stage is really, how do you scale a business beyond yourself so that you can make really good money at it once you've kind of got these things in place? And then the fifth stage is, okay, once you've hit 6 figures, what are the things you really want to work on? And it's optimizing for the life you want and giving back to others.
So you said this is on School, which for anybody that doesn't know, that's an online platform. So within that platform, can the people signing up for these classes with you interact with one another?
Yeah, so it's really a great ecosystem. So School is...
Isn't it SKOOL?
SKOOL. And think of it like, it's like Etsy for communities. It's like a big marketplace for different communities. But within each community, you have places where you can interact with the other members. There's discussion boards, those types of things. There's places where courses can be hosted. And then, there's events that can be hosted as well. So I usually do a weekly Q&A where I'll go through some kind of art business training and then, interact with whoever's on the call as well. And so then afterwards, I will usually go back, because during those calls, I like to get really nitty gritty and get into people's business and help them, think through next steps and stuff. And then after the call, I'll go back and record a clean version of the training to post.
Okay. So like super specific, tailored business help and support.
Yep. Yeah. Business support for artists. I try to be as transparent as I can on there. I do a monthly report where I will walk you through the financials of my own business and show you what's working, what hasn't been working, what my plans are for the next month. So you can see exactly what I'm doing in my business. And then, all the systems that I use to help build that out, I build trainings around those things. And then I just listen to the group and see what the group needs, and then help tailor trainings around that as well.
Yeah, and I haven't come across any programs like that. So I'm really excited to share that with the community here at Mom on the Spectrum. So I'll put the link to that in the description so you can check it out, as well as Aubrey's art website and everything so you can see that. But going back to you're talking about the snow cones and the shaved ice, and I remember that little yellow trailer they all had. If you could go back and talk with that version of Aubrey and give him some business advice, what's something you would tell him?
That would be a lot of fun. I don't know that. Well, first off, I don't know that I'd tell that guy a lot, because that guy had all the advantage of being naive
Yeah.
and just going out there and doing it. And the funny thing is, you talk about community, that business was built on community. So, I
Mhm.
mean, we joke we were selling ice to Eskimos. So we took something that's a very Southern business, moved it up north. That was back in the day when a Facebook group was actually meant something, before Instagram or TikTok or any of that stuff was there. And you would post something in a group, and literally without paying a dime, like, everybody in the group would see it. And so, I built in a town of 70,000. I had probably 10% of those people in my Facebook group.
Yeah.
just, we just built this big community and made it really fun. I built that business just by making it a lot of fun for my community. And so the biggest thing I would tell that guy is I would teach him about pricing, because I didn't know. I was underpriced at first, and I gave up thousands of dollars by not understanding how to structure pricing.
But that's probably what was the catalyst for you learning how to do it better,
Oh, of
and
course.
you said what he had going for him was, I think, being naive, or being I can't remember the word he used.
Yeah, naive.
Yeah, naive. And there's something to that about, I think so often we want to have, especially neurodivergent people, generally speaking, we want to have a blueprint. We want to know, here's step 1, here's step 2, which I think it sounds like your program kind of does a little bit of that. There's also just this, you got to put yourself out there, and you got to try it. And when you start with nothing, it's almost like this passion of I want to do this because I love it and it's fun. And that brings a lot of that authenticity that we were talking about, that can draw a community to you and can really help get things off to a good start. So sometimes, rather than freezing and thinking oh, I don't even know where to begin, just do something, be naive, do it wrong, do it incorrectly, make some mistakes. And that can be the best teacher. It has been for me as well.
Yeah, there's that saying, there's really two sides to the same saying. And one is, anything that's worth doing is worth doing well.
Mm-hmm.
That's true once you know how to do it. But on the front end, anything that's worth doing is worth doing poorly.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that, you should go out there and try, and you'll learn a lot that way. Internet gurus get a bad rap, and I try not to be one, but I've learned a lot of stuff by buying courses and teaching and just learning that way. And the reality is, that can speed up the process a lot for you. But at the end of the day, you do just have to go out there and try things. And so I'll tell people in my group, I'm like, I can't make you a 6-figure artist. I can't. I can show you the things that I did, and I can help speed up that process. At the end of the day, it's you're going to have to work really hard at it. And hopefully you're good at what you do. I mean, obviously art is subjective, but we've all seen good art and we've seen bad art in terms of just quality. Okay. So obviously you have to put that work in, but at the end of the day, it's going to require a little luck and a lot of hard work.
I was watching the trailer, came on my Instagram stories for your Artpreneur classes. And I liked that you were saying that, because it's not gimmicky. It's not hey, I've figured out the secret to success and just sign up and it'll be fine. It's I'm going to show you what I learned. We're going to work on it together. And you've got to put the hard work in. So I appreciate those types of classes, because it's people who think they've reinvented the wheel, and they're telling you something that you've never heard before. I think a lot of times we just need some support and a little bit of direction from people that are further down the road than us,
Yeah, I mean, you can put marketing spin on anything, but at the end of the day, it's yeah, that worked for them. I mean, it's like reading a parenting book. It's yeah, that worked for that guy's child, but they didn't raise your child. So
yeah,
business is the same way. So
I think that's true. And trusting your intuition too, because what works down here in Texas is not going to work the same as it does in Wisconsin. And so you can get somebody else's business advice, and at the end of the day, you have to really sit with it and think, okay, well, they did it this way, but it's okay if I do it my way, even if you don't have the same level of experience or expertise or equipment. When I was starting out, I've told this on the channel before, I had a crappy iPhone, and I was in a dark lit room. It wasn't even lit. It was just a dark room, and there was a humming refrigerator next to me. And in my mind, I'm there's so many YouTubers that are doing this with professional equipment, and they make it sound so good. Who's going to watch me? But you just have to use what you have currently, and then take the steps. But that authenticity, I think, is really what helps get things started, and just kind of that I never know how to say it, naivete at the beginning of like, here we
Right.
go. Like
Right.
what's going to happen next? Okay, so what are some, I know you were saying earlier, like those percentages, I think you said 0.5% of artists never hire someone, or what would.
Yeah, it's like less than 0.5% of artists hire someone else to work within their business.
So what
So
are
most
some.
artists are solopreneurs.
Yeah, so the solopreneurs, but then also like I know that a lot of entrepreneurial ventures, most of them, like a large majority of them fail. So what are some things you've noticed that, like some make or break challenges that you're going to face as a new entrepreneur starting out?
I mean, a lot of businesses fail, and it sure, it has something to do with the operator. Some of them are just bad businesses. You can be a level 10 operator, and be executing on like a level 2 opportunity, and you're only going to get so far. So that's part of the reality. That's why a lot of businesses fail. And that's why a lot of serial entrepreneurs, anytime you'll listen to their stories, what you're going to find out is like, oh, it was the 5th business that really took off. And so there is a lot of just throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. And then the reality is, like, you never get to that 5th successful business without learning a lot of hard lessons on the way. You're going to experience lots of failures over time. So, I mean, the challenge is really knowing, is your business good and does it have potential? Is a fine line between knowing when to pivot onto something else or when to stick it out. One of the greatest skills you can develop is just the endurance to stick it out through the hard times, and recognize that all the work that you do works like compounding interest. If you think of like a business, if you were looking at a graph of a business and it had this hockey stick curve to it of growth, well, if that's only when you zoom out that you see that. If you zoom in on any part of that graph, what you would see is it looks almost flat, right? The reality is that it's growing slowly.
Yeah.
And so in our business, there's never been a time when I felt like, oh my gosh, things are just like growing wildly. There's been flips where there's been really high moments, but those are inflections. But the reality is that it's over time, is that those inflections gradually get higher, and then the low points gradually get higher as well. So it's,
Yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying with that person who came and just bought out your whole stall with all of your art. It's like that was a big high point. And like for me, when I made that 16 characteristics video, if you look at my YouTube analytics, like that's a huge, it just like shot up, went viral. But like overall, when you zoom out, like you said, it's a slow progression upwards. It's not, again, like what you said with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, you find out, oh, this is their 5th or 10th business that they've done. And that's definitely been the case for me as well. Like with the snow cone thing, where I started earlier, is like that was a really naive person, but I learned so much from that and have just slowly evolved into something new. You were talking about pivoting, which I thought was important too, because I think we get caught up, like knowing when to pivot, we get caught up in making the right decision with businesses. And it's like, sometimes you just have to decide, like, do I switch to painting or do I stay with woodworking? It's like, you just pick a lane, and it's not a right or wrong decision until you get there. And then you can reflect on it, and then make the next decision.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just learning when to pivot. I mean, make or break stuff that can kill a business is, one of the biggest ones is you just run out of money. One of the hard things about being an artist or a creative is sometimes that income is unpredictable. I mean, when somebody bought out my art booth, I mean, that was the first time I'd made like 20 grand in a weekend, which was like, oh my God, that's so much money for me anyways. That's so much money. I also recognize that it's like, okay, now I've sold basically all my art. No. So it's like, that next paycheck's not coming for, I have to make the art, market the art, and then sell the art. You can run out of money, and so that will happen to people. So it's important just to understand just some basic business things, like how do you predict your cash flow? Generally, small businesses, the first quarter is going to be your slowest quarter of the year, and then you're going to pick up steam all year. And so you need to understand that. And you can grow too fast. When we grow too fast, things break, and then people get mad, and and then the business tanks. And so part of it is just learning some business skills so that you can grow consistently and sustainably over time. And ultimately that is like, it's really fun if you have those huge inflection points in your business. Like it's very exciting.
It's also
But
exhausting.
you can't, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable in any way. And so celebrate those moments, but recognize that's not actually the type of growth you're after.
Yeah, slow growth I've found to be much more sustainable.
Yeah, you want to learn the business skills so that you can grow sustainably. And when you grow sustainably, you can also help shape the rest of your life around that business a lot easier, so that you have that right balance with family and kids and those type of things.
Those quick moments of growth that happen in the entrepreneurial journey, I'm thinking and connecting that now to our nervous systems as autistic people, and you having to quickly recreate all of that new art, like that can lead to burnout and that can lead to overwhelm and shut down. And so a lot of times, especially content creators will crave like, oh, I just want something to go viral. But like when that happens, that's a tremendous amount of pressure and comments and feedback and, people saying things about you that you didn't want to know and didn't want to read. And so the dysregulation that can happen in those quick moments of growth can be really overwhelming. But okay, to tie it back into the entrepreneurial journey, there's a lot of neurodivergent people who think, okay, especially ADHD people, they want the structure of being employed by someone, but they want the flexibility of being able to do what they want to do. So how do you, and that kind of goes into like this last question here that I had for you. Like there's a lot of neurodivergent people were more, I can never remember, is the right brain the creative side? Right. Yeah, the right brain. We tend to be more like creative and struggle with some of the more like practical challenges. And this is a generalization.
Yeah.
But how have you found that to be true for yourself in terms of needing like structure, flexibility? I don't know if there's a question here, but if you have thoughts about what I'm saying, feel free.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, in running a creative business, I mean, you're working both sides of the brain, especially, the artistic side is very right-brained, if you got that right. And I'm trusting you on that one. And
in my notes, that's what it says.
Okay,
so
good.
I'm going to go
All
with
right.
my notes.
That side is very creative. And then the business side is much more analytical. And so for me as an ADHD person, or an autistic person, I especially somebody who's just late diagnosed, like I just have created like a bunch of systems that basically operate as fail safes in my life. I basically split my day up, and I chunk those activities. That's the only way I can really manage it. I usually in the morning try to do right brain activities, the creative stuff, because that's where I want my best energy spent. So I know my best energy comes before noon. And so I usually try to split the day in half and do half creative and then half business work. Luckily for me, I really enjoy the business side. It's all systems, and systems are just another word for patterns. I'll sit down at the beginning of the week and I do a weekly plan, and I just kind of time block, and that's how I manage it. I don't know that there's any magic sauce in that. That's just how I do it.
Do you feel like you're able to stick to the plan that you come up with at the beginning of the week?
I've learned to be very generous with myself. If I lived in a world where, I wasn't married, or I didn't have kids or pets or anything like that, any other responsibility, I know I would have the tendency probably to just work 80-hour weeks every week. But I really love all the other parts of my life. So, I plan out the week. I kind of time block it out. Like I had this conversation with Molly last night of like, all right, I looked at the week. I thought, man, I got kind of an open week. And then I started looking at it, and it's like, oh, for today, I have this at 10. And then at 12, I have this other Q&A with my group. And then it's like, oh, well, by the time I do all that, I'm not actually going to have that much time left, and I'm not going to have that much mental energy left. I have to do that, and I kind of have to just wrap my mind around that at the week, or I will just be frustrated if my expectations aren't set correctly.
Well, let me ask you this about the groups you're saying. So when you have like a group on Tuesday or whatever, I know a lot of neurodivergent people, like we have a dentist appointment on Wednesday, and it throws your whole day off. Like that's what your day is the dentist appointment. So do you feel that way with business stuff? Like when you have a meeting on the calendars, does that kind of like the transition before and after Are those difficult for you?
It depends on the nature of the event. So that's funny you said that. So tomorrow's Wednesday, and I literally have an 8 a.m. dentist appointment, and then Molly scheduled me a haircut at 1 tomorrow. So I'm like, all right, tomorrow's
Appointment
blown.
day.
It's
Yeah,
over.
tomorrow's blown. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might paint for like an hour tomorrow. It's like I'm not gonna have mental energy to handle much else. The biggest thing for me is it depends on the nature of the task. So if I'm switching from right brain to left brain, that generally helps. So it's like I'm using a different part of my brain. So if all day is creative, then I'm toast by like 2 in the afternoon. I've just worked those muscles a
Yeah.
lot, and then I can switch them off. I can switch to a left brain activity. One thing that really helps for me though is if I do that, I'll change settings. I need to go to a different place and reset.
Change of environment.
So I can do a lot of those left brain activities. They're mostly computer based, so you can do those at a coffee shop or a bookstore or something like that. That really helps me, is changing places. And then the other thing, I work from home. So one of the things that I've learned to do, like if I drop the kids off, I'll sit in the car for a little while. And like if I'm not ready to go in, I'll just sit in the car for a little while, because I've told myself that once I walk through the front door, we're going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that work is painting. But if I work nonstop without any breaks, I used to be able to do that. In my 20s, I could work like 16, 18-hour days without breaks. But I can't do that anymore and still have anything. I can't even do 8 hours straight now and still have energy to give to my kids.
It's so frustrating. I wish that I could work straight through like that. That's what I want to do, but it's just the capacity and
I think I've fried my nervous system enough times that it's like, oh, we're reaching the limit. We're getting red.
It's like the roller coaster
back off.
to shake. It's like, okay, we need to get off this ride. Starting to get better at that. But what you're saying about managing expectations, like with tomorrow, with the dentist appointment, the haircut, okay, it'll be great if I get an hour of painting in tomorrow. And I think those types of expectations are really helpful for neurodivergent people, because it helps, like you said, I think that kind of helps us calm our nervous system and know what to expect, what's coming, and what's realistic in terms of what we are asking ourselves to do. Yeah, I'm not very good at that, but I'm trying.
Obviously, yeah, but it's completely different if you have a family or a spouse or other people that you live with than if you work by yourself. If everybody else is gone, I can still work 10 hours straight, and I'll forget to eat.
Yeah, that's how I am too. I'm like, the whole day is gone, and I didn't recognize that my stomach was growling, and I haven't had any water. And
figure out what works for you. I mean, I heard an interview with Mr. Beast not long ago, and he'll work like 16-hour days end over end until he basically says, I'll just feel burnt out, and then I'll take 2 days off, and then I'm good to go again. If you have children and people that you care for, then
you can't have Mr. Beast's schedule.
No, don't expect that to be a reality. Set your expectations accordingly.
I don't think the 9-to-5 work week, generally speaking, is great for the neurodivergent community, because I think we tend to work in these creative bursts of like, okay, I have this focus that I can devote to this. And like you were saying with Mr. Beast, okay, now I need 2 days off because I put everything I had into this. So just creating, that's what I love about working for myself. The main thing is that I have the scheduling flexibility to change what I'm doing from day to day based off of what my mental capacity is. So it doesn't always work like that, but it's kind of nice.
Yeah. I had the tendency to overschedule myself, and then, Thursday will arrive and I'll be like, okay, we got to back way off and reset our expectations.
That sounds like my work week. So.
And I let my nervous system tell me how to regulate them. So
yeah, it always wants to work hard at the beginning of the week, and then it starts shutting down.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think that we've kind of come to the end of our list here. Do you have any other thoughts that you didn't get to share? Any other ideas to share with the community about entrepreneurship?
I don't know that I have anything specific. I mean, my guiding advice is just, if you're going to try to monetize one of your passions, just know that it's probably going to take way, way longer than you think, especially if you're doing some kind of creative endeavor. If you're good at what you do and the market values what you have to offer, then go for it. And if the market doesn't value what you offer, but you value it, that's fine. Just, that's absolutely fine to just keep enjoying what you do. Not everybody has to be a rock star. You can hold your regular gig and then be a bassist on the weekend somewhere and still have a really great life. So, but if
Yeah.
you want to pursue it, then it's just a matter of learning the skills and putting the time in and knowing that you're going to, fail your way forward into
Yeah.
better and better iterations of what you do.
The more I learn about business, that slow, sustained growth, I think, is really where it's at. And just being, laying that foundation, like you said, it's going to take a lot longer than you think, but that, build a sturdy foundation and it's going to serve you well in the future. Just keep going, especially as an artist, especially as a creator. Keep going, keep creating, and have fun. I'll put links to all of Aubrey's stuff in the description, so make sure to check it out, support his work. I know there's so many of you, like I said, that have reached out. Hey, I want to connect with other neurodivergent artists. This would be a great way to do that. Well, thank you so much, Aubrey. I never know how to end them.
Me either. I've never done it.
See you later.
See ya.